What is up, everybody? Before I get into the impressions video proper, let me start off by saying there's a lot of information going out there around the Eminence and Shadows and their release schedule for the anime adaptation, including a lot of people speculating and some false information out there saying that there's going to be 3 total cores. Let me start off by saying, unless it's on an official channel, always take it with a grain of salt. Every news bit you get out there, take it with a grain of salt. That's why at some point in my coverage of anime, I just decided I'm only going to cover things if it's on an official channel. So if you see some rando saying, oh my gosh, they confirmed that there's going to be 3 parts and it's going to be like 30 episodes, whatever, until it's on the actual official Eminence and Shadows website, don't believe it. I think we've gotten to the point where there's so much misinformation out there in anime. I guess because anime got so popular, suddenly all the clickbait channel news groups are now just jumping on anime. And it really sucks because we're getting so much misinformation leaks out there that's just kind of giving us false hope, and it really does suck. So I usually recommend to everybody, if you see something that says, oh my gosh, there's an announcement, unless it's got a link to their official website or something, don't believe it. Don't believe it. And it's seriously sad because I know people want to be excited. I know people that obviously love the Eminence and Shadows. They want to think that there's another core coming. But again, until it's official, don't believe it. Additionally, they're talking a lot about delays and stuff, which again, until it's officially stated, don't believe it. Because yes, technically, late December, we often get a week off for anime because they really like their New Year's. And so a lot of shows will have a week delay at the end of December. But other than that, don't believe all these rumors. Don't believe fake. I hate saying fake news now. I hate the word fake news now. Anyways, episode 10 of The Eminence and Shadows, I think was a great step in the right direction for the series. I've kind of been cooling off on the series. I still enjoy it, but it hasn't been really fantastic. And I think a lot of my frustrations with the series is that there's too much focus on Sid, and I don't think they're pulling off his jokes all that well. The thing that's been driving me to keep wanting to watch it and waiting for it is, yes, Shadow Garden. I think Shadow Garden overall is a group of girls that I really want to see more about. I want to see their stories. I want to see their personalities and stuff. And yes, episode 10, well, half of it was Sid hanging out with Rose. The other half was, again, Shadow Garden, which, again, is something I really wanted, and I got it, and I love it. Granted, Delta, we only seen for like a brief moment. She was asleep, and what was it? I want to say it was Etta, the girl that does all the research stuff. She's walking around with this gigantic wrench for some reason, and she passes out. And the entire time, I like throughout the entire episode, you're seeing these brief moments. Okay, she first hits the wall and falls over, and then you get another cut where all the maids are staring at her, and then later on you get a cut where they're trying to drag her off. But I think for the most part, it was focused on Epsilon and Beta. Apparently, as we've already kind of established, Beta is obsessed with Sid's story, and so she's writing all these crazy stories. And we additionally find out this episode that apparently at some point, Sid told her a bunch of stories about from his past life, and these were stories that she ended up adapting into her own novels. So she's apparently this big author called Natsume, which I thought was kind of a kick. He says at some point, man, this is like such crazy plagiarism. It's kind of refreshing. She's apparently writing Red Riding Hood and Romeo and Juliet, One Purse, Star Wars, and yes, technically, she's writing The Eminence and Shadows. I like how he doesn't even know what that one is, so that makes sense that he wouldn't know what it is. But it was really funny. I really enjoyed that because, again, we've already kind of established she's always on the sideline just thinking about what to write and always making it super grandiose. And yeah, it seems as if she's always writing herself into the story. So even the whole thing with him saving Alexia, it just wrote Beta inside there. But apparently from Epsilon's side, it's like she's very petite. And apparently based on what he told her about, just, create your own future, change your own self or whatever like that. And so she thinks that, okay, so I can make myself really big. So she used the slime to make herself like very voluptuous and very interesting. I like how later on he literally goes, man, she must have a lot of pride because she's attached so much slime upon herself. And the entire time she's talking, it's just going crazy. It's very, Epsilon's very special, I guess. It kind of implies that Epsilon and Beta are definitely clashing. I mean, obviously, Epsilon confronting Beta and just trying to outdo her with her size and commenting on Beta's side and how he looked at me more the last time we met. It really does feel like she's in competition with Beta. But it kind of, I don't know, goes out of its way to kind of show that every time he was talking to Beta about the stories, Epsilon was in the in the background beyond the window, but reverse when Epsilon was first kind of transformed, Beta was outside looking inside. It's like, I don't know what they're really doing with the two of them as like these, I don't know, rivals or something, because it didn't really feel like Beta cares. I know Beta is obsessed with Sid, but she's not competitive like Epsilon. So again, I guess they're just kind of playing into her mindset. And sadly, that's kind of it. I mean, we did get a brief scene with Alpha really kind of setting up, I guess, the next story they're going to get into, which is this whole church and everything. There's an executioner that came in and took out one of their high bishops or whatever. And so she's kind of trying to figure out what's the true story behind this area. Because through Sid's perspective, we're getting a lot of insight into, I guess, this new region that he's going to, which apparently I think Rose is from, because at some point he says that she's trying to convert him into her religion. And this whole area is really run by this religion. But it kind of tells this whole story about this goddess coming down and giving this power to these three heroes. And those three heroes became the heroes. They had this great power. But at some point they took on princesses of their own, established their own life, and created these kingdoms. But in the background, they're talking about this whole demon lord that apparently was taken down by, specifically, Olivier. And what Alpha's really questioning is, what's the true story behind this Olivier? What exactly happened in the place they called Sanctuary? Which Rose at some point mentioned that in the Sanctuary is where they keep the arm of the demon lord, or this Diablo. And I want to be perfectly honest, I don't know if there's going to be some great story here. It's just kind of one of those things where, amongst all the characters and everything that I'm enjoying, I always like to look into the lore of the world itself, because I've been sort of trained by other stories like Mushoku Tensei and stuff that sometimes writers have these really great stories in the background and it's not just character focus. But I will admit that so far with Eminence and Shadows, most of the backstory information, most of the backstory world building has been very surface level. So when it comes to the point where the punchline happens for the great story, it's always like, okay, it wasn't as deep as I thought it would be. I mean, the whole thing with Sherry and her father was pretty surface level. Again, the cult Diablos and stuff has been very surface level. So I do hope that there's a interesting story here where you do have, again, the goddess, the heroes, the story that everybody believes of the heroes taking down Diablos and all that kind of stuff, and not just being, I don't know, the Diablos was actually good, Olivier took them down, and then they wrote their own history, because the heroes write the history. But we'll see. I really did like Rose, though. This whole segment with Rose and her constantly trying to hold on to Sid, and he just doesn't want to have anything to do with her, of course. Yes, because he saved her life, she's given her entire life to him, but it doesn't seem as if it's going to be all good, because Rose kind of wants him to pass this trial so that she can then present Sid to her father, because as he stands now, she can't. Which, again, is kind of sort of implying that Rose is a part of this region. Their beliefs is in this church and this goddess. And if Sid doesn't believe in her or show some sign that he's of their faith, she can't really be, she can't wed him. Like, that would stop her, because typically with these harem shows, they'll give up their entire family heritage just to be with the one they love because he sacrificed himself for her. But I'll be curious what this whole goddess trials thing is, because obviously it seems like Alexia is going to see it. Everybody's pretty much going to see it. And the only reason that Sid's going there is because Alpha said there's something going on over there, so that's why he's there. Again, it seems like it's some sort of trial that you have to go through to prove your faith to the goddess or whatever, but it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. But yeah, that sort of leads us into our last segment that we had this episode, which was, yes, Alexia and Iris visiting Gamma's shop and indulging in all the greatness stuff that they've brought over from the other world, or at least Sid has brought over from the other world, and including the most important thing that we have to establish in this world, teabag Pantsu. I don't know why I get a kick out of hearing Alexia say teabag every 2 seconds, because yes, the moment that she sees these Pantsu, she's super into it. Like, she has to buy these. And Iris is like, this is so unbecoming. We can't have this. It's see-through and all this stuff. And Alexia has to show her undying faith to buying them. And it kind of implied in this idea that this is something that she has to do to establish the goals that she wants to. And she hopes that the ones that respect her and see her goals as being something of good, they would understand that this is something she has to have. Like, it's taking like all this aspect about her fencing and how Iris respects her fencing and how Sid said that she likes her style, and it's just taking the style of fencing and just replacing it with Pantsu. That's literally what the whole scene was about. And so with that, the stocks around the teabag Pantsu at Gamma's shop has just climbed like crazy. One thing I almost forgot to talk about. It was sort of interesting when Sid was traveling with Rose. At some point, it kept showing, very hard to see because it was obviously different in focus, the background, the backdrop. It was pretty cool to see like the monsters and running around and stuff like that. But additionally, some very interesting monuments in the background, or ruins of some sort of possibly ancient culture. One was specifically this gigantic circular structure, I don't know, like a spacecraft looking kind of thing, and at some point showing a tower. So it sort of implies that this world itself has an ancient civilization that came before it. And we've already kind of established almost like a, I don't know, a mixture between like a Victorian and sort of like a medieval type setting. Still swords and sorcery, but it almost has a Victorian push. And yes, these monuments in the background can sort of imply this old civilization that it could have been a lot more advanced than the current civilization. Or they could just be random dungeons, I don't know. And I do get a kick out of the fact that Beta didn't sign his book. Instead, she put down some information about their next missions. She put in some sort of cryptic ancient lettering. And this is one of those little subtle funny things, is the idea that when they finally get over and sit, she's like, oh, I didn't know you liked Natsumi as well. And Rose kind of looks at his signature and it's like this crazy cryptic message. And she's like, it looks like some sort of ancient text. And he's like, yeah, I don't know really what that's all about. And he just lets her look at it. Like, this is literally their secret code for this secret mission. And he's just letting Rose decipher it. It's like one of those things of like, he just doesn't care. Like, Beta is over here and they're acting serious. They're setting up this mission. Again, this whole bishop thing's happening. The church bishop has been killed and all this stuff. And they're trying to uncover the mysteries of this whole history of Olivier and the Diablos. And he's just letting her look at the encrypted message. Like, it could totally be talking about Rose and how he needs to assassinate her, but he just let her do it. Again, it goes back and forth between that mindset of, does he not care? Or at the same time, does he just not take it seriously? Like, they're just playing into him. But like I said, overall, I enjoyed this episode. At least a good half of it. Finally getting some insight into the girls. Now, granted, little bit disappointing the idea that really most of their dialogue is just about winning over Sid's attention, which is typical in harems. I don't get mad at it, but at the same time, I want to get more about them and more in their minds and what they want to seek out, things they want to do. Beta makes sense. She just wants to write these stories. She loves these crazy fantasies around Sid, and she's basically making money off of that. But yeah, like Epsilon, it's just I want his attention, so I make my chest big, and that's really all we get from her. So again, hopefully we get more about these characters and more their driving force and more their personality, which, yes, technically we got a lot of Epsilon's personality in this episode and I loved it. So anyways, we'll see where it goes from here. But that's my thoughts on episode 10 of Eminence and Shadow. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. As always, if you did, make sure to hit that like button down below, comment, let me know what's thought of the episode. Subscribe to the channel if you're not already. I do news, reviews, first impressions, top list if it's anime, it's pretty much here. Just if you want to support the channel more, we have a Patreon link, a tips link, and a super thanks button down below. I greatly appreciate everybody that supports the channel, and y'all take care.